Yesterday, while I was making lunch, I heard a really loud sound, as if the ceiling was falling or a bookshelf had fallen. My husband, 41, and daughter, nearly adult, were out, and the only other person in the house was my son, teen. I was pretty sure he was in his room, which is on the opposite side of the house from the kitchen. So while making my way there, I checked every room and everything seemed to be in order. I knocked on my son's door and called his name. No answer. I must have knocked and called 3 times before trying to open the door, which was locked. At this point, I was getting really freaked out, thinking that maybe he tipped his wardrobe or bookshelf and it had fallen over him and he was passed out on the floor. I was basically screaming his name, no answer. I have no idea how I did it. I just threw myself at the door and it broke. Now, clearly, the door was already weak. I'm thinking termite? But yeah, it broke. My son was fine. He was freaked out about the door, but fine. The sound was his TV with the volume at max, apparently, and he didn't answer my call because he didn't want me bothering his movie. His words were, "You were screaming like a harpy, and it was annoying. I was trying to watch the movie. Fix the door." I said no, I wasn't going to fix it, since to fix it, I would have to buy a new door, and doors are expensive. And as soon as his dad got home, he would remove the door entirely, as it was too broken to just stay there. He got really mad, said it was his right to have a door. He deserves his privacy. I said he had a door, and while I was the one that broke it, it was a consequence of his actions. So if he wanted a door, he would have to buy it. I know he doesn't have the money for it right now. Until then, no door. He can change in the bathroom. He said, "Screw you." I said it was grounded. Am I the idiot about the door? My husband is fine with it and says only I know how scared I was, so only I can understand the appropriate punishment. I'm now terrified that if anything happens where we really need to reach my son, we won't be able to, but I have calmed down since, and I'm wondering if maybe I'm the idiot. Not the idiot. Sell the TV to pay for the new door. Win-win. I usually say parents are idiots for taking away doors, but this? You and your husband need to sit down and think about how to fix your son's behavior ASAP, because he's way out of line. My goodness, your son is incredibly disrespectful. If not having a door is a punishment he doesn't like, no door for him then. If it were me, he also wouldn't have a TV, phone, tablet, laptop, gaming system, etc. Saying screw you to a parent is almost always inexcusable. Top that with his nonchalant behavior about not answering, saying you screamed like a harpy, and then fix the door? Game over, dude. Agree. When I was a young teen, I dated some dudes that were super disrespectful to their mom and were, in turn, abusive towards their later partners and me. I remember afterward, I talked with the women in my family who said, always look how a guy treats his mom, because that's how he'll treat you. That was the best advice I was given. OP, how your son treats you is disrespectful, but a big red flag for any potential partners. Disagree. You can't punish this out of him. He has to care about your feelings. He needs some sort of therapy for empathy and attachment because he's showing no regard whatsoever for the feelings of others at this moment. OP, you need to pay for his door ASAP if you want to build your relationship, and see a therapist because you seriously need to look inward. You are the idiot, OP, for not getting him a new door. He needs privacy. He doesn't need a TV. Think of different and better ways to discipline him that don't remove his privacy and space. You also seem neurotic. By the way, there was one loud noise from the TV, even though it was at max volume, and you didn't hear that while you were at the door made of cardboard? Are you lying to us? Are you a mother or a parent? She was afraid for her child's life. Hearing a loud thud and no response from your child is very nerve-wracking. OP, your son did have a point about the privacy, and perhaps the appropriate way forward is to have him help pay for a replacement door as a natural consequence of deliberately ignoring you. As a graduation present for my niece, my sister and brother-in-law let her choose where they spend their 2-week holidays, and my niece chose France. As my sister has connections with a swanky hotel there, she invited my wife and me, as well as a few other family members, to join them on this trip, all expenses paid. The concierge has been booking activities and restaurants for ages. This was planned 11 months ago, and during that time my wife got pregnant. The problem is my wife loves all winter sports and activities, but in her condition, she can't participate in 2/3 of what was organized. However, my sister said it's fine. The hotel has 2 floors of spa and wellness facilities, and there's plenty to do outside of physical activities in the area, which some other family members will be doing anyway. We can always ask the concierge for appropriate experiences. This won't work, as my wife doesn't like being left out, and winter really is her favorite season, and we can't afford a trip like this ourselves. It's really upsetting her that she won't be part of the group to go mushing or skiing or fat biking, and that she'd have to see photos or hear about it later. I've asked my sister if we can't postpone the trip, but she said that's out of the question, as my niece goes to college in a few months. Also, so much time and money has gone into planning this trip. I suggested that maybe we could go somewhere warm, where my wife won't feel as bad for not participating in water activities. But my sister said that this wasn't a decision for us to make. We're just guests. We've just come to a standstill, where I called her selfish and inconsiderate, and she said that's hypocritical since I want to change 8 people's plans due to my family planning. She told our parents about our talk, and they called and told me to prepare my wife and me for being unable to attend or do many things in the upcoming years. Parenting means putting your own wishes to the side. They told us to be glad for the trip we'll have, even if we can't do everything as planned. We'll need to learn to be flexible soon anyway. But I feel like that's not the point. The trip was organized to make everyone happy, and now my wife will be excluded for most of it, and it just feels really unfair to her, especially when this can all be scheduled for next year or something. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. The plans are made, things are booked, and this is a special trip for your niece. There are things your wife can do. She may not be deliriously happy every moment of the trip, but that's life. The world doesn't need to bend over backward because someone got pregnant. Maybe just don't go. It's a painfully generous gift already, and you want a different free vacation present because your wife doesn't like that being pregnant limits her mobility? Yeah, tough crap. That's what pregnancy is like. An all-expense-paid spa baby moon in France sounds awesome. You two are being massive idiots. Right? If I were the sister, I'd be like, you know what? Never mind. You're no longer invited. Because I wouldn't take the risk that they're playing nice now, but will make a fuss once there, and thus ruin the fun for the niece whose trip this is. They're already starting by asking people not to talk about the fun stuff they'll be doing. That's not going to get any better once they're actually there. Also, gotta love the "my wife got pregnant" part. You mean you two decided to try to have a baby? I'm not saying you should delay having kids for a trip, but you knew trying to have a kid might mean she'd be pregnant during this trip. So entitled. You don't deserve the invite and are very lucky your family seems to be forgiving. Don't ruin this for your niece. Update. All right, I got it. I was wrong. I'll just see what pregnancy-friendly snow activities are available and ask people to limit talk about their skiing and mushing. I'll be staying with my wife during this trip, but it won't change most of the others going on to do activities that we had all planned and talked about doing together. Or we'd have to hear about what we missed out on later during dinner or something. I have 3 adopted children, and my parents have so far been good grandparents to them. They've never mentioned to my husband or me or to the kids anything about having a problem that I adopted instead of having biological children. My brother and his wife have an infant son who was conceived by a sperm donor. I know this because my brother's wife talked about it with me, but my parents were unaware. They treated my nephew the same as my kids when they were babies, so I've never been concerned that my kids would be seen as lesser because they're adopted, while my nephew was supposedly their biological grandchild. This is why I was so surprised and confused that my parents had been talking about how excited they were to have their first Christmas with their biological grandchild. They did a big expensive holiday photo shoot with my brother, his wife, and his son, something they've never done with my kids. They were the ones who suggested it to my brother. It's not like it's just because he asked and I didn't. The weirdest part was that they casually mentioned some of the things they bought for my nephew for Christmas. As far as I can tell, they're spending more on him than they are for my 3 kids combined. And it's far more than what they spent even when my oldest was a baby. In fact, when my kids were little, they used to say there was no point in buying expensive things for babies, for Christmases or birthdays, because they wouldn't remember it, and they'd rather spend the money when they're a little older. So my nephew's suddenly being favored over my kids, and at the same time, my parents are starting to emphasize that my nephew is their biological grandchild, as far as they know. I pointed this out to them and said it bothered me. They denied treating them differently, and they said I was being weird about money. I truly don't care about money. I care about the difference in treatment and that my kids might notice how little they're getting from my parents compared to their cousin. And now for the part I'm starting to feel awful about. I told them the truth about my nephew. My parents were furious at my brother for not telling them and thanked me for telling them the truth. They keep saying he tricked them and gave them false hope about having a biological grandchild, which I guess answers the question of whether biology actually mattered to them. My husband says I did the right thing because it removed all the lies and secrets, and if they didn't care, it wouldn't matter, but if they did care, they deserve to know. My brother says it wasn't my secret to tell, and I jeopardized his son's relationship with our parents. So, am I the idiot? Everyone's the idiot here. It wasn't your secret to tell. You were wrong to do it that way. But grandparents are super idiots, and so is your brother. So here's what would have been above board. Go to bro, tell him what you've seen and how it makes you feel. Then tell him that he needs to tell his parents, and if he doesn't, you will. But you didn't. So acknowledge that you handled your part badly, but that doesn't excuse everyone else's way worse behavior. OP's brother and sister-in-law didn't have to say a thing if they didn't want to. I mean, let's be real here. She only spilled the beans out of spite. It's not like her children were in mortal danger from the grandparents. She spoke about a very sensitive topic instead of tearing her parents a new one and going no contact to show she means business. If the situation was that bad, that would have been a reasonable option. I disagree. OP shouldn't lie to their parents. If the brother didn't want them to know, he shouldn't have told OP. Otherwise, it's asking someone to lie to their parents. When you hear them say something and you don't correct it, it's a form of lying. The brothers heard how they talk about OP's kids not being biologically related and less than others, so he decided to defraud them. That's awful. OP's not the idiot for speaking the truth. Exactly. Sure, it was their info to tell, but they had no intention of saying anything because they were enjoying the benefits of keeping their mouths shut. Your brother didn't care that you or your kids were being treated differently or unfairly because he wasn't on the receiving end. Now that he is, he cares about privacy. I, 27 female, have a brother, James, 29, who's married to Emma, 26 female, and they have a kid, Josh, young male child. I also have another nephew from my sister, in her 20s, but was not really involved, Danny, young child. I'm very close to Danny, and I see him every Wednesday, as I have Wednesdays off, and his parents work. It is a great opportunity for quality time. So every Wednesday, I take him to a small local waffle place for lunch. Recently, James and Emma asked me if I would mind watching Josh when I had Danny on Wednesday. I said sure. This was about a week ago when they asked, and I meant to have them both the next Wednesday after Christmas. Well, yesterday I had a text from Emma just saying thanks for offering to watch Josh, but then she went on to let me know that she was going to prepare a packed lunch for Josh. I said that wouldn't be necessary, as I take Danny out for waffles on Wednesday for lunch, and we would all eat there. She asked me to send her the menu, and I did. She said she didn't feel comfortable with Josh eating there, as the food was very unhealthy, and she didn't see any options she'd be okay with Josh eating. She said she would send a healthy packed lunch for Josh to eat, while Danny and I ate the food from the restaurant. I explained that I was sorry, but no, I was not okay with that, as I thought it would be unfair on Josh to watch his older cousin eating lots of nicer food, while Danny has to have a packed lunch, and that I also didn't think it would be fair to cancel our normal plans. Emma told me to stop being rude about her food, and that it wasn't her fault that I and Danny's parents allowed him to eat unhealthy food. James also got involved, saying I already agreed and I should respect his wife's wishes. I said I was sorry, but I could watch Josh and take him to a nice lunch with his cousin, or I wouldn't take him at all. Just to confirm, there is no medical reason for Josh's diet. Emma is very serious about health and fitness at family events. She's normally very strict about what she'll eat and allows Josh to eat. I've also seen her be quite controlling about James's diet, but I assumed she'd make an exception for her son to have a meal with his cousin. But maybe I'm being too judgmental. I just feel these rules are unreasonable and pretty harsh, and I don't want to enforce them. So am I the idiot here? Having the child watch you both eat at the restaurant is ridiculous, even if the restaurant even allows outside food. Not the idiot. This is some next level controlling behavior. Good for you for pointing out how weird it is for a kid not to have one unhealthy meal. Don't give in, or you're tacitly supporting it. The poor child. Not only is it cruel, but it may be hard to enforce. Will you forbid his cousin to share and lead to a meltdown? I have personal experience with people like her, fitness moms who are obsessed with not feeding their children bad foods. It's like how to give your child trauma around food and their body 101. Agreed. OP, you're absolutely right that you can't treat one child and not the other. That's a recipe for all kinds of resentment. Second, you're entitled to stick to your plans. If Emma doesn't want her child participating in those plans, she's essentially forced your hand. You simply can't take Josh. I, 26 male, have been raising my brother, a young child, since he was a baby. Our parents passed away not long after he was born. No one in my family wanted to take him in, besides one set of grandparents, but they were too old to look after a newborn. I wanted to take him in, so I wasn't upset that no one was fighting me on it. The other day, my grandparents came up to visit. With them, they had my cousin, 20 female. I honestly don't like this cousin, since she starts drama and seems to thrive on it, but I thought she could keep her mouth shut for an hour while our grandparents visited, so I wasn't bothered by it. That was until I caught her telling my brother that I wasn't his dad. I knew then she was trying to start drama. My brother calls me dad, and I call him son. So from the outside, people probably assume he has no clue I'm not his dad, but that's not the case. He's always known that I'm biologically his brother, and that mom and dad had an accident, so I became second dad. He's known this all throughout his childhood. I told my cousin to screw off and get out of my house, out of reach of my brother, of course. She tried to do some sort of gotcha and say, "What, afraid your brother will find out you aren't daddy? Why are you angry at me for telling him the truth?" I didn't say a word and just threw her out. Now I'm getting calls berating me for swearing at her and embarrassing her in front of our grandparents, since apparently they chewed her out for it and told her that my brother knows and that she caused a fuss over nothing. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. She knew darn well what she was doing, and that was trying to start some major drama for you and your brother. You don't need that kind of person in your life at all. I go no contact, but only after telling everyone in the family exactly what she tried to do. I'm also glad your grandparents chewed her a new one for it. Your cousin wasn't trying to cause drama. She was actively trying to hurt your brother and your relationship with him because she thinks she has the power to do it, and there will be no consequences for her. The least they can do is embarrass her. I'm sorry, OP. Some people just can't help themselves. Best of luck to you and the kiddo.